Hello, debt warriors, and welcome back to another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. I'm your host, Katie O'Shea. Today's episode is a little different. I'm switching roles and stepping into the guest seat. I recently joined Gallagher and Shawn Lubitz on Affinity Federal Credit Union's podcast, Wellbeing and Your Wallet, for a great conversation titled, What I Wish I Knew in My 20s About Money. We discussed the financial lessons we've learned over the years, from spending habits we'd go back and change to the confusion around credit, the importance of emergency funds, and much more. Let's dive into that conversation now.
Welcome and welcome back to my Wisdom of Wellbeing Wombats. This is Wellbeing and Your Wallet, the Affinity Federal Credit Union podcast made just for you. Probably thinking, who, me? Yes, you. We made this just for you. And we hope you like it enough to share with your friends. But again, you don't have to, because we made this episode just for you, Joe. Anyway, now that my creepily direct intro is out of the way, we're going to go and talk about today's episode, which is taking a look back in order to look forward, taking lessons from our past to help you avoid the same mistakes we made. That's right, just a bunch of millennials talking about their roaring 20s up in here. No, not the roaring 20s, our roaring 20s. Probably not too dissimilar, but, we had MySpace and Facebook and not a whole lot of other crazy stuff. But, before we foxtrot our way down memory lane, I'm Grant Gallagher, head of Wellbeing here at Affinity Federal Credit Union. And inexplicably joining me once again is my co-wombat-in-chief, who told me that he's so dedicated to his well-being that he's been going to gym multiple times a week since his 20s. Before you get to impress my dear listeners, you have to know that Jim is the name of the guy who makes the sandwiches at his local deli. It's Shawn Lubitz.
Yep.
Shawn, say hi to the folks.
Hello, everybody. Very fair. I was going to say the gym to work out. Yeah, I wish. I wish I did. Looking back, I wish I've been doing that since my 20s. No, welcome back. Any existing listeners, any new listeners, I'm very happy to have you here today. I think we have an exciting one for you.
I sure hope so. I think we will. I'm feeling good about it. And then last but certainly not least is one of my favorite fellow podcasters. It's Katie O'Shea. Katie is the social media and content specialist at Navicor Solutions, where she creates engaging and educational content to help individuals take charge of their finances. She's also the host of Navicor's podcast, Millennial Debt Domination, which you can stream on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Navicor Solutions is a national nonprofit organization that provides financial education and compassionate credit counseling services. Whether you're managing debt, budgeting, or planning for a more secure financial future, Navicor is here to help. A debt-free future is possible. And of course, here at Affinity, we have been partnering with Navicor Solutions for actually decades now to offer our members the extra support they need. And I am so grateful to have such great partners alongside us to help drive financial well-being. Katie, welcome to the show. Anything that I missed you'd like to add?
No, I think you nailed it all, Grant. Thank you, Grant and Shawn. I'm looking forward to being on your podcast today.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you being here. So we will just jump right into our icebreaker. So today's icebreaker is, what's the first big purchase you made that made you feel like a real adult? And Katie, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so I think for me, it would be the first car I bought because, I had to budget for closing costs, insurance, and the monthly payment on it. And I feel like once I bought that, I felt like a real adult because that was the largest purchase I've made so far.
Yeah.
So I'd say that one would be mine. What about you guys?
I'm feeling it.
Yeah,
Shawn, what do you think?
I would say the same, except not my first car. The first time I bought a vehicle without my parents as a co-signer, I think was kind of that one that made me feel like an adult, right? So they having no credit, being younger, right? Not bad credit, but no credit. Having parents that did have great credit on a loan with me obviously helped pretty significantly with the loan payment. But then after establishing that credit history, getting a vehicle on my own, being able to walk into the dealership, sign my own name, and walk out with a vehicle made me feel like an adult, and also probably equally terrifying in that moment as well.
So we're all pretty much on theme here, because while mine wasn't actually car, mine was car insurance.
There you go.
Because yeah. So I don't know about you guys, but in high school, my parents paid for my car insurance. I had to buy my own car. Like I paid for it, but the insurance, they took care of that. it wasn't until after I graduated from college and they were like, yeah, no, you're on your own here. And it was like, buying the car is the fun part. The insurance is just like, oh. So this is what adulting feels like.
It's like putting windows in a house, brand new windows on a house.
Yeah. So that was my adult wake up call spending where, I was like, oh, party's over.
Right.
So, as I mentioned at the top of today's show, we're diving into what we wish we knew in our 20s about money, from reckless spending habits to financial mistakes we didn't even know we were making. We're breaking down the lessons that only hindsight can teach. We'll also explore how emotional and social pressures like trying to keep up with your friends, saying yes too often, or tying our worth to what we own can unintentionally sabotage our savings goals. Whether you're in your 20s now or just want to reflect and reset your current financial habits, with the help of Katie today, today's episode is going to be honest insights and tips to help you avoid the most common money pitfalls. So, Shawn, I know you got a first question for our guest here. So why don't you kick us off?
I do. I was going to say, and Katie, you're up first. I will ask this to you. Grant loves to talk, so we'll let him go second on this one.
I'll try not to hijack too much.
So when you think back to your 20s, what spending habits would you go back and change, and why would you make those changes?
Yeah, so I just turned 30 this year. So this is all fresh in my mind, looking back at my 20s. And I think I'm in a different situation than some people in their 20s because I was working at Nabocor for a good part of my 20s. So I feel like that helped me make better money decisions slowly. But I would say the one thing I wish as I would have taken advantage more of investing is like in my retirement, especially. I've like always been contributing to our company's retirement plan, but I wish I had been contributing more in my 20s. And I think the reason I didn't is because I always had student loans in the back of my head. And I always thought I would be paying those off more aggressively. So I wasn't contributing as much as I should have been to my retirement fund. But my student loans are paid off now. So I have been contributing more to my retirement. And I'm trying to think about those important steps I need to take to help set me up later in life now. But I'm definitely not alone, I feel like, with that because it's not uncommon for most people in their 20s to not think about their retirement, especially when they have these student loans hanging over their head. So my advice would be just don't forget about long-term goals when prioritizing those short-term goals. So I would say that's kind of my one regret.
That's so common. You see that just massive ballooning debt balance from your student loans. You're like, oh, I need to that's what just takes your eye off of the long term prize, and you kind of just like retirement's so far away. Well,
right.
That's tomorrow me's problem. Today me is focused on the student loans. So my actual habit was I took deal shopping to an extreme. I would just see these things and the discount was so good that I felt like I needed to buy it. And I just accumulated so much junk that, I would use a couple of times, get frustrated with it because it was such like a low, poor quality product. And that's why the discount was so good. And it would just get, shoved in a junk drawer somewhere. I think of this net book I bought for like hundreds of dollars because it was like more than half off. And I think I got less than a year's use out of it because it just ran like absolute garbage. And actually, this just made me realize that I think listeners of the show have heard me mention my laptop buying issue in the past, and I think it might actually run deeper and longer than I actually realized. So, I'll send Shawn my therapy bill.
Yeah, there you go. I think me and Katie are on the same page today, to be honest. I think investing also, and a little bit different, not just being out of my 20s, right? So I'm a little bit older than you, Katie, but I think looking back, anybody in their 20s right now, it's easy to get information, right? And I feel like information is kind of proactively pushed at you when it comes to investing. And it's very easy to go through the process to invest if you make that choice and it's something you want to move forward with. I think back to my 20s, it was kind of scarier. You think about investing and you think about, I have to go sit down with someone. I need $10,000 minimum to open an account to start to invest. But that is something I wish I kind of did a little bit more research on. And I was a little more proactive with myself, because anybody, and I'm sure Katie, you know this, Grant, you know this as well. When you start investing at 25 compared to 30 or 20 compared to 25, it is such a huge difference when you think about retirement and the amount of money that you're able to make from that money.
It's so true. I mean, it's like those first I mean, I don't want to say few dollars, but those first few years of when you're saving up towards retirement are the most impactful. You know, they've compounded the most. They've been, building the most, and really, it's those first dollars. And I'll tell this to anybody who will listen. That's in their 20s. It doesn't matter if it's $1 a month that you're putting away. Like, those are the most impactful dollars. Just start the habit. Just start to get something in there, because it'll start to build, and it'll build, and it'll build. And then you'll see that balance, and you'll feel good about it, and it'll motivate you to do more. So it's like, don't just ignore it. And the same goes for an emergency fund. It's like, I feel like so many people just put off and deprioritize an emergency fund. But, and Katie, maybe you can talk a little bit more about this, but, what other common money mistakes are people usually making in their 20s? And, how can you avoid those?
Yeah, I do think you just brought up a good point about the emergency fund, because people in their 20s kind of think they are invincible.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen to
Yep.
me, or they could be bailed out, but you really should be having some sort of emergency fund. And yeah, I mean, when we talk about investing, it is the power of compound interest, which I think if I didn't work in Abercrombie, I wouldn't know what it was, even still to this date. And I think a lot of my friends have no idea that, yeah, even if it's $1 a day, put something towards retirement in some sort of investment, even if it's just a savings. Putting something away is better than nothing. And I think just getting in the habit of saving something and building it up over time is something many, many people in their 20s, the mistake they make.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Again, I think it's easy to get caught up in the moment. So I go back and forth on this one, right? I think understanding what savings is very, very important. But when you are in your 20s, you have typically less responsibility, right? So you typically don't own a home. You typically wouldn't have children when you're in your early 20s. So it's less responsibility. So you want to go out and enjoy your money a little bit more.
Yep.
And I think it's a double-edged sword, right? You want to go out, you want to have those experiences, you want to have fun with your friends, but you also just need to think about it in a responsible way and kind of prioritize what's important to you. So I think, again, some people in their young 20s, they get caught up in the just go out and have fun, and I'll do that tomorrow, like you said earlier, Grant.
Yeah.
And that it catches up after a while. All of a sudden, you're 40 years old, and you're like, man, wish I did that when I was 22.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? It's like, you still got a car, right? Well, most people do. I'll say if you live in like an urban area, city, something like that,
Right.
you probably don't have to worry about that. But, there's still different size emergencies no matter where you are in your life. It's probably not going to be a leaking roof during a thunderstorm kind of emergency, which, is unfortunately the bane of every homeowner's existence. But, everybody has something that pops up, especially if it's like, medical. Health stuff is so expensive these days, and everybody's got to stay healthy. Even you 20-year-olds,
Yeah.
you're not invincible.
Yeah. I definitely am a lot better with now, hopefully, and obviously, than I was when I was in my early 20s, was just credit and understanding credit. So when I talked about, having my parents co-sign for vehicles with me to get the best, the lowest interest rate, have a lower monthly payment, but credit, as much as I thought I knew what it was when I was in my early 20s, I really didn't have a clue compared to what I know it as now. What should young adults understand about credit to avoid making sure that we don't have any regrets later on in life?
I feel like this is a hot topic right now because it is confusing. Don't get me wrong, especially when you're young and you're 18 maybe and you decide you want to open a credit card. My biggest thing is I just feel like I wish people would understand that you do have to pay this off. This money has to be
Yeah.
paid off. And if it's not paid off, there's going to be repercussions later in life. So I think a lot of, especially kids nowadays, the Generation Z, they think, no, this is free money. We can just spend whatever we want on credit, but no, you have to be paying at least the minimum
Yeah.
amount on your credit card each month, at least. But it really isn't good to carry over balance at all on your credit every month. I wish people would know that too as well.
Yeah.
So those are my big things, because your payment history is the biggest part of your credit score. So you need to be paying at least the minimum. But if you're only paying the minimum and you have a huge balance on your credit card, you're just ending up in a cycle where you can't pay it off at the end of the month, and then you're collecting interest, which I think a lot of people don't understand either.
Yep.
So, I mean, but credit is super confusing. So I can see why people wouldn't get it, but
That's
Unless, yeah, sorry.
I'm like,
I was
yeah,
just
I'm
gonna
really
say,
excited agreeing with you over here.
I mean, it is confusing because there are so many student credit cards they'll get you to sign up for in college and you don't really understand it. So that would be my biggest thing about credit.
Yeah, no, you've like hit a nerve with me where it's just like how credit works and credit scores are calculated. It's unintuitive. It's like even if you get how money works in general, there's just aspects of it that just don't, it goes against common sense, right? Like if you have a whole lot of credit cards and credit lines open, you'd be like, oh man, this person needs to borrow all sorts of money to afford their life. The credit card companies look at that and it makes your credit better. It's like, really? Having 10 credit cards that can improve your credit score? Like that seems absolutely crazy to me. But if you actually dig in and understand how the 5 areas of credit work and how they're all calculated, like there are things that just like go against natural intuition. My other big one is like with payments. It's like you would think if you went out and you ran up your credit card and you paid it off before the end of the cycle, that would be good. It would show that you're a super responsible borrower. You can afford to spend the credit that you're spending. But if you're doing it without carrying a balance or before the cycle hits, it actually doesn't do anything for your credit. So it's like these little things that are just so unintuitive where you have to do your homework. You have to understand and kind of study it to kind of understand how all these pieces work together. I don't think a lot of people have like the patience for it, but the reality is like you want to build up that credit score so that you can get the cheapest borrowing possible. And I think people don't really understand that either, is like that's where the main benefit of having good credit is it opens up the cheapest rates possible. And that means borrowing money is the most affordable.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say, Grant. It's understanding you make your payment on time, right? That's what I knew it as.
Yep.
You want to make your payment on time, right? You want a good credit score, but you don't really understand the negative impact it has if you have a poor credit score, right? Like I said, you go out to buy a vehicle, instead of 4%, it's 13%. Or you take out a loan, instead of 8, 9, 10% for a personal loan, now you're paying 26, 27%, depending on where you go. It really has some pretty tremendous negative impact on you down the road. And unfortunately, it's when you really need that credit is when you're going to feel the pain, right? That's when you're going to feel that pinch of that additional interest being paid because of your credit score being the way it is.
Well, and I mean, honestly, it's like so much of your 20s is getting information from the people around you, your social circle, right? And I can't say that a lot of people are like, hey, you want to talk about credit today? Like, it's not what's the interest rate on your auto loan? Like, it's not a conversation that really happens. So people just kind of assume everybody else has got it figured out, and then they're just kind of they're frustrated, and it really leads to this kind of like information vacuum and awkward emotional and social pressure all throughout your 20s, where you don't know that you're making the same mistakes as the people around you just because you're not talking about it. So, Katie, can you talk about us a little bit? Like, what are some of those common mistakes because of that, social pressure and stigma around talking about money that leads to things like over and underspending?
Right, because money is such a taboo topic. And speaking about social pressure and credit, like I have just think that many people in their 20s charge just everything on their credit cards now, and they're not understanding the repercussions. And it's, oh, let's go on this trip, right? And it's like everyone's just charging it on their credit cards, but nobody's talking about the fact that that's how they're paying for it. And a lot of people in their 20s are they're valuing these experiences more than anything. And I think they're not talking about how they're paying for it. They're all just going to go on this trip, and no one's saying, oh, well, we just ran up our credit card bills.
But Katie, the minimum payment is so affordable.
That's what I'm saying. That's you don't know. And everyone just thinks, okay, well, if they're going, they must be in a good money situation. So just put on my credit card. I don't want to miss out. So that's one thing I think. And I think another mistake people are making is just not even budgeting at all altogether for anything, without a plan of where your money is going. It's easy to overspend on your credit card or overspend in general and feel like you're always broke, even with a decent income. But it sounds cliche, but these little expenses will add up over time. It's not even just the big trips. It's charging on your credit card that $6 iced coffee every day that I don't need to budget. It's only $6 every day. if that's how that's $30. And it sounds so cliche, but you really do need to budget for every aspect of things you spend on.
Yeah, I again agree with everything you both are saying. I think it's when you're younger, and again, I'll speak from my point of view. When you're younger, you want to be, you don't want to miss out on things, right? So when you, like, the definition of FOMO should have my picture next to it, right? Especially in my 20s. So if they are going on a trip, if they're going away, if they're going to a restaurant to have dinner, whatever it might be, it could be going to the movies. You don't want to miss out. You want to go, and you're like, oh, it's, to your point, it's little purchases. You're like, I'll put that on the credit cards, $20 here, $50 there. And then at the end of the month, you're like, how did I spend $600? And I can tell you this, looking back now, I cannot tell you what I spent that money on, but I can tell you, I wish I didn't. And I wish I did save a little bit more and I invested a little bit differently, because that's something that, again, I think will have a much bigger positive impact down the road.
And I think the problem is, it's just like, you're holding your, like, say you're trying to go out, make the right financial decision. You're trying to save for retirement. You're trying to have an emergency fund. You're budgeting and all that. And you see your friends going out and doing all this stuff. You're just kind of like assuming like, oh, they must be like planning and budgeting and sitting, but they're not. So you're holding yourself to a different standard where you're trying to make these responsible decisions, and they're just living their life, without worrying about any of that stuff. So, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself with that's unfair and unreasonable. And, one of the things you can do even from that perspective is like have a conversation with your friends of like, listen, I'm trying to save up towards this. I'm trying to save up towards that. Can we look to do something that's, less expensive? Can we go out every other weekend or once a month instead of every weekend? Or even pull them into the financial responsibility world and be like, you're going to be my accountability buddy and help me save, or even just, be the planner for your friend group and, try to steer them towards less expensive things. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can do to try to navigate that over underspending without just completely tanking your social life. Right.
Right. Right. Be the person that actually brings it up, because no one wants to be that person, but you could be that person.
We're here trying to tear down those awkward financial conversation walls. So, help us with that battle.
It was actually really funny. I'll share this story. Me and my wife, my 3 daughters were out at a restaurant. This is probably 4 or 5 months ago. And the table next to us was a group of guys. There was probably 4 or 5 of them. I would say the oldest they were is 25, 26 years old, mid-20s. And they were having a conversation. One of them actually brought up his finances and how he's investing in a 401k at work and how IRAs work. And he was explaining to his friends. And it was so funny and interesting to me how his friends were so genuinely interested in what he was telling them. So they weren't sitting there like, oh my God, Grant's bringing it up again. And we told him not to. We're out trying to enjoy a nice dinner. But they were asking him really good questions. And my wife kept looking at me like, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm just totally eavesdropping in this conversation.
You're like, Shawn,
yeah, I'm like, this is great. So it was just funny to me that one of them, and he was pretty knowledgeable on the topics, but the rest of them were very interested in picking his brain and asking him questions. So it was kind of good to see.
I love it. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break and be right back with more early on adulting money mistakes right after this.
At Affinity, we want to know you better and offer you the best resources to help you on your financial journey. Our professionals are here to assist you in reaching your financial goals with confidence. We also serve the community around us and host many events that our members can be a part of. Join us on one of our complimentary webinars. Learn more at affinityfcu.com.
And we're back. We're here with Katie O'Shea, social media and content specialist at Navicor Solutions, as well as host of the Millennial Debt Domination podcast, talking about our money mistakes from our 20s. All right. So, Katie, I got another one for you. How can someone in their 20s create meaningful short-term goals like saving for a car, or long-term goals like building wealth at the same time?
So I'd say creating both short and long-term financial goals in your 20s, it's not only possible, but it's one of the smartest moves you can make. But I'd say the key to understanding is that both types of goals serve different but equally important purposes. So I always tell my listeners to start with your short-term goals, which are typically things you want to accomplish within maybe like a year or two. So this could be building your emergency fund, which we talked about earlier. And an emergency fund is crucial for people of any age.
Amen.
So I can elaborate a little bit. Yeah, we touched on it earlier, but I could kind of elaborate on how you want to go about saving it. So I always tell everyone to start by saving 3 months worth of living expenses. And once you've done that, then work your way up to saving 6 months worth of living expenses, because this will help you to not derail any of your long-term financial goals. So that's a really important step on your way to achieving your long-term goals. So, you also want to be laying the groundwork for long-term goals like retirement, as I mentioned earlier. I wish I would have done at an earlier age, or a future home, which I wish I would have saved for at an earlier age. So even if you're only able to contribute a small amount towards these, consistency is what matters. So I would say if your goal is for saving for retirement, definitely just start by your workplace's retirement fund, 401k, 403b. So this is a great move, even if you're only contributing 3 to 5% of your income at the beginning. But that's what I would say. And then I would also say, if you're looking to save for these goals, prioritize them and make sure you automate them. So you can always change automation too. So if you want to maybe contribute $100 more a month, just make it automatic, so you don't even see that money coming out of your paycheck every month. So that's kind of my advice on long and short-term goals.
It's that getting started part that I think trips so many people up, and that advice really helps cover just kind of that first hurdle. You'll get some momentum. You'll see that, hey, this stuff actually works, and then you can tackle, those bigger, chunkier ones, right?
Yeah.
Shawn, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, and we've talked about it on previous podcasts as well, it's sometimes it can be daunting when you set that goal, right? I want to buy that new car. It's I need to save $10,000. I have 100 saved. That seems a little daunting, right? And it can be kind of demotivating pretty quickly. So setting that monthly goal of I want to save $150 a month, right? Or $200 a month. And to your point, Katie, automate that. It feels really good to not have to think about it. And then just get used to budgeting without those funds being a part of the conversation. Again, I think it goes a long way, but getting excited about kind of the steps and the milestones throughout the process, not only looking at the end result as being kind of a pass or fail, celebrate some of those smaller successes on the way. Again, that's for me, keeps me motivated. But how would you say someone can stay motivated to continue to build good money habits when it feels like everyone around them is spending freely? And we talked about this a little bit before, but if I'm struggling with my $200 a month automated savings and I see Katie and Grant driving around in their brand new Mercedes, it seems like every month, how do I stay motivated?
Yeah, this could definitely be tough. As we talked about earlier, I'd say social media, peer pressure, and even like your family can make it seem like you're missing out if you're budgeting or saying no, like we talked about earlier. But the truth is that like appearances can be deceiving. Just because someone is spending doesn't mean they're financially secure behind the scenes. But I would say one of the best ways to stay motivated is to get really clear on your goals. So specifically say, what are you working towards? When you define your why, it becomes easier to say no to things that don't align with your vision. You're not depriving yourself. You're making intentional choices, I'd say. And then I would also say surround yourself with people who respect your financial boundaries or who are a similar financial journey, as you mentioned earlier, about talking about it with your friends. It is such a taboo topic, but it's always good to surround yourself with people who are in the same financial mind state, even though you might not talk about it all the time. But yeah, if that's not possible, follow personal finance creators online, read inspiring financial stories. You can join a financial community, something like that. So for example, I've had some Navicore clients on my podcast recently, and they've shared their stories and how they've overcome the craziest financial hardship. And these stories are so inspiring, and they can show that you're not alone going through difficult financial times. Because a lot of the clients I talk to, they think that they're alone, and that's why it maybe takes them so hard to reach out to. But listen to some podcasts where they have people sharing their stories. It could help you on your journey as well.
I love it. And Shawn, just to clarify, if I'm going to be doing reckless spending, you'll be seeing me drive around in a Rivian, not
Oh,
a
there you go. All
Mercedes.
right. Fair enough.
Um,
Fair enough.
but I love that, Katie. Like you have to make a plan and talk about it. Like, don't keep it to yourself. Like, communicate it. And I've talked about this before, where it's like, if you're on a diet and you're going out to eat and you're like, I can't eat this, people respect you. They're not going to give you a hard time about it. Like, so if you're on a financial diet, you would expect the people that you surround yourself with to respect that as well. So there shouldn't be any shame in it. There shouldn't be any, shame in saying like, okay, I can't, go balling this weekend at a 5-star restaurant, but when I'm able to go on that vacation this summer, like, who's going to be, smiling then? You really just have to think about what your priorities are and make those meaningful, thoughtful choices. You nailed it there.
Yeah.
And again, sharing, I think having the open dialogue with friends, family does go a long way. Obviously, know who you're most comfortable sharing that with. Some you probably prefer to keep it a little more closer to the vest and be like, no, I'm not going to talk too much about finances to them, which is totally fine as well. But having the open conversations with people that you trust so that they understand what your goals are, go a long way. So if every time Grant asks me to go to lunch, I'm like, no, I'm not going to go to lunch today, Grant. And he's like, all right, I'm just going to stop asking Shawn, right? I've asked him every day this week and he just won't go. Maybe it's something I did. Versus, hey, Grant, I'm really trying to save. I'm trying to put a pool in the backyard for the kids. So I'm really trying to be tight with money. Can't go out to lunch with you, but I'd love to just, I bring my lunch every day. We can go sit and have lunch together. It doesn't mean we have to go out. Right. It sounds a little bit
Thank you for finally sharing that with me, Shawn. I was starting to think it was something I said.
Nope, definitely not anything you said. But I think, again, you want to feel comfortable with who you're opening up to, but opening up and having those conversations and giving them some insight into why you're looking to save money will only benefit you, right? And then maybe I go downstairs and try to grab that candy bar, and Grant's like, Shawn, you really need the candy bar, number one. You really need to spend money on it, number two. So giving people a little bit more insight into your goals will go a long way.
And that planning is so important, and having those goals are so important, because we see it so much where somebody is just ignoring a plan, ignoring financial planning, putting it off. That's 30 me's problem. But we've seen that, delaying that snowballs into bigger problems later in life. So Katie, can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, putting off financial planning in your 20s, it might not seem like a big deal, especially in the moment, because everything seems so far away. But the truth is that time is your greatest asset when it comes to wealth. And ignoring your finances early on can create a snowball effect of missed opportunities and growing challenges. So when you delay things like saving, budgeting, or investing, you're not just losing out on money, you're losing out on compound growth, compound interest, which can be incredibly powerful over decades. So I would say an example of this is someone who starts investing just $20 a month at age 25 could have significantly more saved by retirement than someone who waits until 35 to start, even if they are contributing more later on. So I would say that. I would say on top of that, putting things off like building credit, creating an emergency fund, or managing your debt can lead to poor financial habits that are harder to break over time. It's kind of like the same as paying only the minimum on your credit card each month. That's just going to be a bad habit that it's hard to break bad habits out of your 20s. So I'd say work on these bad habits now. So when you're in your 30s, 40s, you're already in the groove of doing things
understanding and educating yourself too. Again, I knew a little bit about money in my 20s, right? I started working in banking when I was 21, 22 years old. So I understood the basics of money, but it's not even just the dollars and cents, right? It's the education that's going to go such a long way. So yes, you're saving money. Yes, you're investing. Yes, you're thinking about your future. But then when you're 30 years old, when you're 35 years old, you're 40 years old, you have that level of knowledge that other 30 to 40-year-olds are just trying to kind of, get, crack the end of understanding what that looks like, and just make sure that, I already have it, whether I saved in my 20s or not, or I wish I saved more. I have a deep understanding of what I have to do now as I get a little bit older in life to make up for what I didn't do in my 20s. Katie, last question I have for you. What are some uncommon smart money moves you can make in your 20s that'll set you up for success when you're older, right? We've talked a lot about some things to avoid. What are some things you think we can do to set ourselves up?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the main thing would be just start investing and honestly start. I want to go back to the student loans because what I did, and I think that was super smart, was there's a minimum payment usually on your student loans. I would say if it's possible, paying more than that minimum because that's going to set you up to pay them off a lot sooner, which worked really well for me. Especially once I started making more money and everything, and I used that money I was making, I put it right towards my student loans, and I started aggressively paying that. So if you have student loans, that would be one of my suggestions for you. It's just anytime you get any sort of raise or anything, put that money towards your savings, something like that. And even when you finish your student loans, this just recently happened to me, I'm taking that same payment and I'm putting it right towards my husband and I's retirement. So I'm putting it right towards something else. So I've already used to been missing it. So that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. One of the things that and this kind of goes back to some of the regrets that I had where I was not super comfortable with investing when I was in my early 20s. I probably didn't start until I was like in my later 20s. And, looking back, if I had just gotten like a little bit uncomfortable with it, pushed myself a little bit more to be like, okay, I don't need to just like hoard all my emergency savings in a CD. I can, diversify a little bit, put other places. It definitely would have grown a significantly more amount. And granted, your mileage may vary with investing, but that was one of the things where it was just like, I was just, with my familiarity with it, I was just super uncomfortable with it. So it was like, I kind of was my own worst enemy and held myself back. And I mean, honestly, it's like I could have become better educated on it, but I just didn't take those steps to get more comfortable.
Yeah, I think just living within your means goes a long way too, right? So
Yeah.
it's easy when you're younger to kind of outspend what you're making, and then it takes a very long time to kind of catch yourself up and get back to a good place. So just living within your means. If you get a promotion at work, that's fantastic. It doesn't mean that you have all this extra income to go out and spend, right? You still want to kind of create that budget where you're saving a significant amount of that. Then you're putting some money towards investing, and then you do increase some of that fun money as well, right? So instead of going to the Jersey Shore, now you might take a trip to Florida. That's absolutely okay, but you still are saving some of that money as well, and making sure that you're living within your means as you grow within your career and make more money.
Yeah, that's
But budget creep is real, and if you're not working on that plan, that extra money will find a way to disappear somehow.
Yeah.
So that brings us to everyone's favorite segment, not just Shawn's today. It is our member mailbag. And if you have a question or comment for our member mailbag segment, you can send it to us at membermailbag, all one word, at affinityfcu.com. All right, so today's member writes in, my partner and I both work freelance jobs with irregular income, and it feels impossible to budget when some months are great and others are tight. We're tired of feeling like we're always catching up or overspending when we have a good month. How can we build a budget or system that actually works with unpredictable paychecks? What do you think, Katie?
Yeah, this is a great question. Since many people in their 20s are in this position where they may not be working the standard jobs that pay the same bi-monthly, same amount bi-monthly. So budgeting with an unpredictable income can definitely be a challenge, but I think it's absolutely doable with the right system. So I'd say the key is to build your budget around your lowest average monthly income, not just your best case scenario. And start by looking at the past 3 to 6 months to figure out what your lowest monthly income was. And that'll become like your baseline budget. Cover your essentials like rent, groceries, utilities at any minimum debt payments you have with that number. So then after you have your baseline, don't increase your spending automatically in the months where you may be earning more than that baseline. That's important. Yeah, exactly. So kind of just keep that baseline same, even if you are earning more. So instead of doing that, create a few mini funds, one for irregular expenses, one for savings, one for leaner months too. You want to make sure you're budgeting for that. So think of this as building your own personal buffer or paycheck smoothing system. So, and I would also say that if you're kind of have an inconsistent income, remember that flexibility is important. And a budget isn't just a rigid plan, it's a strategy to stay in control and make sure your money is working for you. So if you do need to redo your budget, that's possible too, depending on what you're making.
Yeah,
every
definitely.
Can I just say ditto to that? Is that acceptable?
Yeah, just a plus one on that.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Katie. And I think that is actually very, very difficult, regardless of how old you are. Having an income that does fluctuate month to month or even week to week or whatever it might be can be very difficult. So again, I think kind of setting that baseline, making sure that, when you have that good month, it's not just party time.
Yep.
You know that the tough months and the tight months are still going to come at some point. So I agree with everything you said, Katie. I thought that was great.
I think that's the hardest part, is just like psychologically, you want to tell yourself like, oh, the good month is like the new norm and it's going to be like this, but it's the feast or famine, and the famine's coming down the line. And a lot of service workers see that, where they have a lot of seasonality to their work. The one thing I would add to it is, you can use credit and borrowing also as the tool to help smooth things out over those lower income months, as long as you recognize that is what they are, and you're going to pay it back on the higher income months. It's not just that you assume the higher income months are the norm and then the lower ones are just something you borrow against. No, you need to balance it all out, have a plan, pay it back, understand that paying interest on that is all part of that game. But that might be a viable strategy for those that don't have the capacity to kind of build up a bigger cash reserve, or are tempted by that cash reserve when they do build it up, because we know that that's another challenge that we have as well. But excellent advice. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Shawn. And that brings us over to our product spotlight. And today we're talking about Affinity's Smart Start Savings Account. So whether you're saving for a down payment, dream vacation, or rainy day, we're here to help you earn more toward your financial goals with Affinity's award-winning, high-yield Smart Start Savings Account. Affinity Smart Start Saving earns 7 times the national average as reported by the FDIC, which means a higher savings rate on more dollars for Affinity members. For those new to the program, it's unique for its inverted interest structure that encourages our members to get started on their savings journey with no minimum balance and no monthly maintenance fees. It's a great way to start building your emergency fund, since this structure allows for easy access to funds when you need it, with no limitations on transfers or withdrawals. Did I mention Smart Start is award-winning? Affinity Smart Start Saving Account was recently named Best Credit Union Savings Account for deposits under $10,000 by CNBC Select, and was previously recognized as Best High Yield Savings Account by the buy side from the Wall Street Journal. Save smart, earn more, and reach your financial dreams quicker with Smart Start. Visit affinityfcu.com/Smart Start to learn more. All right, believe it or not, that brings us to the end of today's episode. I think we covered some really great, just general advice for those, looking to start off on their financial lives, how to save, how to spend, how to be responsible, how to plan. Shawn, what parting words do you have for our listeners?
Just last thing I wish I knew when I was younger was you have options when it comes to bank accounts. So here at Affinity, we have a couple amazing checking accounts. Whether you want to earn the highest possible yield on your checking account, we have a high yield checking account. If you're someone who prefers cash back and putting more cash back in your pocket, we also have a cashback debit account here as well. So we have some amazing accounts. There's some great options. And again, when we talk about budgeting, both very solid options to put some money back in your pocket.
Thank you, Shawn. And then, of course, Katie. You can find Katie and the Millennial Debt Domination podcast on all major podcasting platforms. So be sure to check it out. What are your closing thoughts or plugs you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I would just say that, everyone talks about your 20s as being this time where so much is changing and you're discovering things by yourself. This is true, but however, it's always important to remember your finances are changing with you, and that you'll want to make positive changes with them, because it's so easy to neglect your finances in your 20s. But keep it in the front of your mind rather than the back of your mind. And like Grant mentioned, you can find Millennial Debt Domination wherever you listen to podcasts by searching Millennial Debt Domination. And if you do find yourself struggling with your credit or any aspect of your finances, you can find Navicor at navicorsolutions.org.
Well, thank you again so much for joining us today. For our listeners, just a reminder that if you have a question or comment for a future member mailbag segment, please email it to us at membermailbag@affinityfcu.com. We always appreciate if you rate, like, and subscribe for more Wellbeing and Your Wallet podcast. You can visit us at affinityfcu.com for additional information about financial well-being and Affinity products. And as always, thanks for listening and be well.
I hope you enjoyed that insightful conversation with Grant, Shawn, and me. We covered some key money habits we wish we had known in our 20s, and hopefully our experiences can help you make smart changes to support your financial future. You'll find links to Wellbeing and Your Wallet and Affinity Federal Credit Union's information in the episode description, so be sure to check that out. That wraps up another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening, and if you're tuning in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to rate and review the show there. I'll talk to you next time, Millennials, Gen Z, and everyone else tuning in. Bye.
Thank you.